Good morning, San Diego. Welcome into another edition of the Braden Surprenant Show. We were off last week, back in it this week for some weekend programming on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Thanks for making your morning a part of our morning, or our morning a part of your morning, for some live and local Sports Talk Radio on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. I apologize for not being here last week. I had a great opportunity, and a big thank you to the University of San Diego for giving me that opportunity to call a baseball game at Dodger Stadium last Sunday, in which the USD Toreros baseball team knocked down Michigan by a large score of 9-1. It was a great game for the Toreros. And USD is back in action this weekend. They have split so far the 3-game series between Dallas Baptist and USD out in Dallas, Texas. Had a nice little comeback last night. They're down 4-2 going into the top half of the ninth inning, and the circus came to town for the Dallas Baptist Patriots. Great at-bats by USD. They end up winning 8-4 over the Patriots, and we'll go for the rubber match today on a Sunday. That is the limited college baseball talk we will have. We'll also kind of bring up some of the other squads. San Diego State played Nevada this weekend. They're still playing Nevada today at Tony Gwynn Stadium. UCSD is in action at home against Pacific. We'll talk about that later on in the second hour. I will talk about Aztec basketball as well. A tough loss for San Diego State on Friday against Boise on Senior Day at Viejas Arena. Kind of a disappointing loss, and kind of finishes a disappointing season for San Diego State in the regular season. I think it's disappointing, but I also don't think it's a down year for San Diego State. San Diego State basketball could still very much go on a run here in the Mountain West tournament, but also in the NCAA tournament. They do have the weapons to do that, and we've seen San Diego State basketball accomplish some pretty impressive things this year, but it just seems disappointing going into Vegas this week, and they got the 5 seed in the Mountain West. And I know the Mountain West Conference is a lot better than it's been in the past. It's a really good conference. I'd argue it's in the top 3 best conferences in college basketball, behind the Big 12 and probably the ACC. Kind of in there with the Big East, if you will. Sorry, the SEC. The ACC is okay. They got Duke and North Carolina, but that's about it. But the Big 12, the SEC, and then it's kind of a crapshoot with the next best conference, and the Mountain West Conference might be that 3rd best conference. So finishing 5th, a little bit of a disappointment, I would imagine, for most Aztec fans, just because they were in the national championship game a year ago. They did return a decent amount of those players from last year, had high expectations, played a very difficult schedule. But San Diego State, I don't know. We'll talk about that in the second hour, especially when we start talking about conference championship week this week. USD lost last night to Santa Clara. They ended their stretch in college basketball for the season, but a good year for Steve Lavin and company, as they were able to win a lot of games this year in comparison to what they've done in the past. They've been able to accomplish a lot this year that they haven't done in a long period of time. It comes just short as they lose to Santa Clara last night, but a pretty impressive kind of building block year for the men's basketball team at USD. And that men's basketball team at USD got their most wins since 2018-2019 with 18 wins this year. Their first winning record since the same year, 2018-2019. Best West Coast Conference finish since 2014-2015. And they even notched their first win over a Power 5 team since 2018. It was very much a building block year for USD and Steve Lavin. Last year was Steve Lavin's first year, but this year seems like his real first year because of how late he was to the game in the hiring process. They got him during the NCAA tournament. He had to quickly try to turn things around, brought in transfers. But this past season, with some of the freshmen that they have had and the young talent, which all of them are expected to come back as long as they don't enter the transfer portal, USD has a very bright future in college basketball with Steve Lavin at the helm. And you know what else does? UCSD as well. UC San Diego, last year of being ineligible. If this time next year, they will be playing in the Big West tournament. and will be playing for an opportunity to go to the dance in the NCAA tournament. They will not have Bryce Pope as a senior, but they knocked off Cal Poly last night. Cal Poly gave them everything that they could handle yesterday, but UCSD prevails. UCSD has a great year and a great building block foundation in La Jolla as well. So we're going to get everything taken care of on the college basketball side coming up at 9. We'll talk about the Aztecs, and we'll talk about where they stand and what March Madness looks like. I already got some comments about how there'll be a first-round exit. They're good enough to win some of those. They're good enough to win some of those games in March Madness. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, Jaden Ledee could get sneezed on and be at the free throw line 25 times, and then all of a sudden San Diego State's in a good spot. So we'll see what happens in the Mountain West tournament. I would imagine they're going to have to win a couple of games to try to be one of those top 4 seeds in a region. I think they're probably going to get a 5. They could drop as low as 6, but we'll have a full update on that later on. I just wanted to get that kind of out of the way because I do want to talk about Padres baseball. I want to talk about Padres baseball. I mentioned it. If you don't follow me on social media, B_SURP, BSURP on Twitter, Instagram. I'm on TikTok as well now. Those are my 3 main accounts that I use. You could also follow me on YouTube as I have other content on YouTube on top of the content from 97.3 The Fan. So follow me on all platforms. But on our kind of pre-show that I do on Instagram, walking into the building, I mentioned I wanted to talk about this Padres team because this is really the final week of spring training for the Padres. It's already gone by. It's amazing how fast it's been. Obviously, a lot of that has to be with the fact that they're going to Korea this week. And they're going to be in Korea for a long time. A nice long week in Korea before they get ready to take on the Dodgers for 2 games. And I think that series can go a couple of ways, obviously. I find it very rare to think that the Padres are going to take 2 games from the Dodgers in Korea. I think more likely than not, they'll probably split just because it's kind of a weird thing. It's beginning of the season, a faster ramp up for the regular season and playing in a foreign country and, the time change. And I know they're going to be able to adapt to that for a little bit, but I think a 1-1 split is very expected in this series, but I also think they could get swept in LA or in Korea as well against the Dodgers. I find it very hard to believe that they're going to take 2 from LA, but it'd be great. And we could talk about some of this roster. We could talk about the young guys. We could talk about how it's not a complete roster, but I really do think that there are pros and cons to this Padres 2024 season. And I think that's going to change the direction of what this Padres team is going to be in 2024. Because it at the beginning of the year, it could spiral into 2 totally different situations. You want the pros first or you want the cons first? Let's go with the cons. I'm going to get my negativeness out of the way. Because a lot of people during the week on the Annie Nelson show thought myself, Annie, and Craig were all being negative about the Padres season, when in the reality is we were just calling out what we see in front of us. And what we see in front of us is an incomplete roster with the hope that the young guys are going to be at their ceiling when they start in 2024, which is not going to be the case. They got bright futures. The Padres are the top 5 farm system in Major League Baseball. They come in at number 4, according to MLB Pipeline. The Jacob Marcys, the Jackson Merrills, the Graham Pauleys. I mean, these are the guys that are showcasing and headlining this prospect class. Ethan Salas is still way too young. He's 17 years old. And I know DeVry is on there as well. But those guys are in the future, even more so than some of the ones that are just knocking on the door. So let's go with the negative side first. The cons of the 2024 season. The cons are you don't have a full roster. You don't have a center fielder. You don't really have a left fielder. You have a shortstop playing first base. You don't have a designated hitter. And for the time being, until Manny Machado is back, you don't have a third baseman. So I guess for that period of time, you do have a DH, but you're still missing a guy. And then you have a very, very young, weak bench with the exception of Kyle Higashioka and probably Jurickson Profar, who's not going to start in left field, but most likely going to be a role player for the Padres. Other cons, you have a 3-man rotation. I mean, you can get excited as all you want for Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer for the Pods. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's probably a 4 or 5. He's really not a 4. He's a 5 at best, and he's probably not starting in a rotation for many playoff teams. Again, I'm getting all the negative out of the way. Here's all the cons. I think your bullpen's pretty good. You kind of lack some experience in the closer role, but honestly, your bullpen, there's not much I can nitpick with the bullpen. You got a lot of arms. You got a lot of good arms. I think the bullpen's going to be fine. So you have a 3-man rotation with, by the way, 2 players that are coming off of injuries last year. Joe's not that old, even though he's around 30 now. Yu Darvish is, even though I trust Yu Darvish is going to have his body and his ability ready to go. But you have 2 older, I wouldn't really consider Joe Musgrove an older player. He's kind of like an average baseball age. But you have Yu Darvish as an older player coming off an injury. You have Joe Musgrove coming off an injury. And you have Michael King, who has yet to make it through a major league season as an everyday, as a member of the rotation, because he was in the bullpen for the Yankees. He had started at the end of the year, but not a full season. So you're really relying on those 3 guys to make it through the year without any significant setbacks, which is a hard ask to do, especially with 2 players coming off of injury. And again, somebody that's not experienced being a starter at the major league level in a rotation. It's got to pitch every 5th day. Con. Your position group again. You're relying on a lot of young guys. You're relying on Jackson Merrill to be at his ceiling going into 2024. I talked about it earlier in the week. Jackson Merrill and CJ Abrams relatively have the exact same stats in AA before they were pulled up. Almost the exact same stats. Merrill played like 6 more games than Abrams. It's around 6. You could go check it up on Baseball Reference. The average was relatively the same. The on-base was relatively the same. Merrill had a little bit more slugging than Abrams because he hit 3 extra home runs than CJ did in AA San Antonio. And the at-bats were a little bit different, but they're relatively the same. CJ Abrams in his first year of Major League Baseball hit .235. Is that successful for you Padres fans? Is .235 going to be enough for Jackson Merrill at the Major League level? Again, I'm talking about the cons, so anybody that's tuning in, I'm going to get to the pros here in a second. And there are some pros about Jackson Merrill. I mean, you got the same thing with Graham Pauley. I mean, he's doing very well right now in the spring, but is that good enough to make this roster? Are these players in particular, the Jackson Merrills, the Jacob Marcys, the Graham Pauleys, are these players making the roster because they are outplaying everybody around them and they deserve to be on the team? Or is it because the Padres have holes they need filled and they're not going to go out and sign anybody else? They leave for Korea this week, guys. If they were going to sign somebody, they would have signed them by now. And we're going to get into that in just a second because they have been talking with Tommy Pham. They have been talking with Michael A. Taylor. But they haven't been able to see eye to eye on what those players particularly want, either in a contract or playing time, in comparison to what the Padres can willingly give them. And maybe they can make a deal for those 2 players. Maybe they can get one of them. I think that drastically changes things in the outcome of this team just by signing one of those players. But again, young guys who haven't done it yet that are now going to be forced into doing something that I know they're confident and willing to do. They're 20 years old. 20-year-olds are indestructible. Just ask them. And I know they're going to have the confidence to do it. But my question is, are you willing to sacrifice the future of some of these players to just satisfy the right now? And that's a tough decision that the Padres are going to have to make. Can they win with 3 young guys in major spots and rely on them to go out there and perform at a high level for when they do fail, because they will fail in Major League Baseball. It's a humbling sport. Everybody fails in Major League Baseball. Can they overcome that as their first failure of their baseball career? That's where you get concerned when it comes to young prospects. The last con I'll say is the selling point from the Padres to the fan base on these players has been the exact same selling point they have sold Padre fans for the last 10, 15 years when it comes to prospects. They said the same thing about Manuel Margot and Carlos Asuaje and Luis Urias and Hunter Renfroe and Austin Hedges and Corey Spangenberg. Now, a lot of those guys' numbers were not the same as these players in the minor leagues, but they said the same thing about CJ Abrams. They were all relatively going to be the savior of the franchise. And maybe as Padre fans, we get too excited about it and start getting way too excited. But are we setting these guys up for failure? We'll find out. Those are the cons. Here are the pros. And I think there are some pros to this 2024 team. Because on top of the cons, okay, one more con. You lost arguably the best left fielder hitter in all Major League Baseball. You lost the best closer in Major League Baseball, and you lost last year's Cy Young Award winner in Major League Baseball. So your roster, just with those three guys leaving and not adding anybody else, is worse than it was last year. And last year, they won 82 games. Okay, done with the cons. Here are the pros. The pros for the Padres. I'll start with the young guys, because I've been hard on the young guys for the last couple of weeks, but I just want everybody to understand what's going on with the young players. Here are some of the pros. All three of them are highly valued by Major League scouts. All three of them, in particular Jackson Merrill, are highly talked about from their clubhouse and their fellow teammates who have been there and done that. And all three of them are young, hungry players that aren't going to give a you-know-what about anybody else because they're trying to make a name for themselves in Major League Baseball. That is very much a pro. That is something the Padres have been lacking the last couple of years, are those young, hungry players that are looking for that contract, that are looking to be stars in Major League Baseball, that could go out there and they're going to outplay the Los Angeles Dodgers because they're so young they don't even know what they're doing. That's a major pro. If Jackson Merrill, and I'm going to focus on him a little bit more than the other two guys because it's more of a shoo-in that he's going to be on this opening day roster, even though I think it'd be better for him to start the season in minor league ball and then get pulled up midway through the season and not put the entire franchise on his shoulders. But Jackson Merrill, if he could be what he's expected to be, and that can happen as soon as this year with his hungry, confident attitude that he's got, and he is very confident. I love that. This Padres team is going to be a lot better than it was last year. But that's a major if. I also think it's a major pro. Another pro for this team. Everything that Joe Musgrove has done during this offseason and building that team camaraderie and setting that culture and setting that foundation, I think is a major step in the right direction for this Padres franchise that has really lacked that. Really lacked that. And that kind of building of an identity because they've never really had an identity. I think Joe Musgrove is really taking the bull by the horns here as one of the leaders of the team, as the lone representative of somebody that is from San Diego that gets it, that feels what Padre fans feel. He's doing the job himself. So if the players can come together, despite maybe the roster construction in the front office, and the young guys go out there and they're young, they're hungry, they want to go hunt, they want to go hunt down the top, they want to go be the best, they want to go make a name for themselves. And you get that young pitching like that as well, especially the young guys that they got from the Yankees. This team could be like the Diamondbacks from last year, except they got stars. And about those stars, those stars are still superstars, regardless of how last year was. And maybe a mindset change and an attitude change from the big players, which they are saying all the right things and they're doing all the right things right now. And you get a bounce back year out of Manny Machado. And you get Xander Bogaerts in his second year on a bounce back, which I think he's going to have a big year in his second year. We've seen that out of a lot of players that have come to be Padres over the last couple of years. And Fernando is finally with a full season of Fernando Tatis Jr. And you get good starts out of Darvish and Musgrove. I'm saying a lot of ifs. All of those players. This could be a really good season for the Padres. But again, it's got to go in one or the other direction. If Jackson Merrill fails to the major league level and it kills his confidence, they're going to start trending in the wrong direction. If the Padres get out to a good start and Tatis and Bogaerts and Machado are off to good starts offensively and they're getting the bottom half of the lineup to contribute in some sort of way and they're playing hard, nose, grinded out baseball, this team could be a problem for a lot of teams in the National League. The pros, the cons. I've laid them out for you. You can make the decision yourself of whether or not you think this team's going to be trending in the right direction or is on the brink of a disaster. I think it could go either way. And I don't think Korea is going to decide that. I think you're going to get a 1-1 split in Korea. I would expect, even if you go 0-2 in Korea, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Don't get the win. Don't let the win get taken out of your sails on 2 games in a foreign country where anything is possible. We got to go through that first month of the year and kind of figure this thing out. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Want to join the talk show today? Feel free to call in. I'll answer your phone calls. We could talk Padres baseball. I'll mention some of the comments as well in the YouTube chat. If you want to join us on YouTube, you can. It's at 97.3 The Fan. It's at BSurp. You can join the YouTube chat. You can follow me on all social media accounts. We are streaming live on all of them at B_SURP. When we come back, we're going to break down some more Padres baseball, talk about the week that was for Padres spring training, and then in just a little bit, we'll tell you whether or not the Padres are going to sign an outfielder, maybe 2 this week before they leave for Korea. All coming up next on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local on the weekends. San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. We're going to be here each and every Sunday from 8 to 10 in the morning. It's going to be great during baseball season when we're able to lead into a Padres game after talking about a Padres game the night before. Getting into football season is going to be great. Recapping college football, getting ready for the NFL Sunday. Lots to talk about, and with local flares and flavors to it, because it's tough listening to national radio on the weekends. I mean, how many times you jump in your car, you get 97.3 on the entire time during the week, from Ben and Woods through Andy and Elston, through Gwen and Chris, talking about local Padres baseball, and then all of a sudden, you forget it's still on, and you're driving around on the weekends, you go, what is this guy talking about? Why do I care? Well, no more of that on Sunday mornings. When you're going out, you're driving to church, you got your honey-do list, you got to get out there and get up early. Maybe you're getting donuts for the family, going to breakfast as a family, driving around town all the way to different places throughout San Diego, going to travel ball tournaments for youth sports, whatever it may be on your Saturday, Sunday weekend, really. Your Sunday, 'cause I'm not on Saturdays. Not yet. Who knows? Thanks for making our day a part of yours by tuning in to 97 through the Fan. You can also follow on social media, B_SURP at BSURP on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We got videos on all of those platforms, highlights from the shows, other content as well. Follow me on YouTube at B_SURP. We are streaming live on 97.3's Facebook page, YouTube page. We're on Twitch. I did see a couple of you on Twitch. Shout out to you Twitch watchers. We're live on Twitter. We're also on my Twitter at BSURP, my YouTube at BSURP, and of course my Instagram account as well. So shout out to all of you guys tuned in wherever you may be. Love all the comments, always great. Again, a lot of the pros that we talked about on this Padres team has a lot to do with camaraderie, has a lot to do with team chemistry, has a lot to do with what Mike Shildt has done with the San Diego Padres this year, and kind of the new change focus. I think a lot of that has to come from the players, and that's a major talking point when it comes to team development and expectations and how far a team can go. Really great teams are led by players, even more so than just coaches. So even though that there was a managerial change and Bob Melvin's now in San Francisco and Mike Shildt has that edge, it's going to have to come for the players. I think the players have done a great job of taking that role on and leading this team and making a more tight-knit group. And, we'll see during the regular season, but we're already starting to see some of the sacrifices for the team, like Xander Bogaerts moving from shortstop to second base, checking their egos at the door, something that wasn't the case last year in 2023. That's a major pro to this Padres ball club. I saw some in the chat. I mean, there's a couple in the chat talking about, I don't care about Graham Pauley's defensive play at first, and I really don't care about Jackson Merrill's defensive play in the outfield. Jackson Merrill's a shortstop by trade. The guy's athletic. He's probably one of the most athletic guys on the field. That's why he is a shortstop. So him transitioning to center field or left field, I don't think is that big of a deal. I'm just glad he's doing it in spring training and not in the regular season trying to learn it. But I know he's going to be a great outfielder, just like I knew Fernando Tatis Jr. was going to be a great outfielder too. The guy's athletic. I can put Fernando pretty much in any position and feel comfortable with the exception of maybe catcher. But even behind the dish, I know Fernando's going to throw some guys out. The same thing could be said about Jackson Merrill. I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about his adjustments at the dish. That's what I care about. I care about whether or not he can hit that major league fastball because that's his first test. And not a spring training BS fastball either, where guys are working on stuff. I mean regular season, major league fastball, which I think he can hit. And then after that, when they start mixing in the off speed, when they start adjusting to Jackson Merrill, when they get tape on him and they get the scouting reports, that's where I care about Jackson Merrill. And we've seen that from a lot of these teams that have brought up guys. That first year has been tough for a lot of these players. And again, he's not Fernando. So we need to stop saying, well, Fernando did it. Yeah, he's not Fernando Tatis Jr. If he ends up being Fernando, that'd be fantastic. I'd be exuberant. But he's just not that player. All of those players that I've mentioned, Philly had a couple of those guys in Arizona, and you could even say with CJ Abrams. I mean, look at CJ Abrams. He had 235 his first year and then started to come on second half of last year in his second year in the bigs. I think you have to be willing to understand that might be the case for a kid like Jackson Merrill, and you can't flip on him real quick just because he comes out of the gate and doesn't look good. I've been saying that ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks. I mean, Anthony Rizzo looked like crap when he came up because he didn't have a lot of at-bats, and then all of a sudden he got rushed out of town. I don't think the Padres are going to get rid of Jackson Merrill, but we have to be patient with those guys. You can't expect him to come out here in the first week of Major League Baseball, first month, and hit above 300. I hope he does, but it's not a guarantee. I would hope that the Padres would bring in Tommy Pham. It sounds like they've talked about it. I don't think that's going to be the case either. As Chance said in the YouTube chat that I've seen, they are rolling with this squad. And I could have told you that 3 weeks ago. By the time they got to spring training and after the first week and a half went by and it wasn't sounding like they were going to sign anybody, they weren't going to sign anybody. If they do, it's icing on the cake. But I don't think that's going to happen. This is your 2024 Padres. I laid out the pros and cons last segment. You can be the judge of whether or not you think it's going to be trending in the right direction or the wrong direction. We'll talk about the full roster when we come back and whether or not they can add Tommy Pham, if they're really interested in adding Tommy Pham or Michael A. Taylor, a couple of guys that have been rumored to be talking with the Padres. I'll tell you the latest on that as well as where we stand as a roster, and you can start making your own decisions. Because, again, they leave for Korea this week. This is the last week of spring training for the San Diego Padres. We'll take a look at that 26-man roster when we come back. Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local on the weekends on Sunday mornings on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Thanks for making our morning a part of your morning. As we talk some local Padres baseball, getting ready for regular season Padres baseball coming up not too long from now. We're 10 days out from the Padres' first game because we were 10 days out from me being 29. It's on the same day. It's going to be a long day. But we are all doing some of us are going to be doing a watch party down at 7 Mile Casino. Ben and Woods going to really lead the charge on this one since they are the morning show and are going to get preempted for the first time for their show. So everybody that wants to be a part of a watch party down at 7 Mile Casino will be on Wednesday, March 20th, getting ready for Padres and Dodgers. Sam Levitt will have the pregame show. I don't think he's going to do it down there at 7 Mile Casino. I don't know for sure yet, but I do know that Ben and Woods will be doing their show down there, leading into Andy Nelson. It'll be a long day for all of us of Padres baseball on opening night, opening morning in Korea. So I laid out for you the pros and cons of Padres baseball for 2024. And there are reasons to be excited. I think there are reasons to be concerned as well. As the Padres overall, I don't really think have a complete roster, but this is the roster that they are rolling with. And I think any other signing outside of this would be icing on the cake. Here's the latest we had from Robert Murray of Fansided about the San Diego Padres and Tommy Pham. And I think if the Padres were to add Tommy Pham, I think it would change the outcome a little bit. Padres continue to explore the outfield market with Tommy Pham being one player of interest. Pham and the Padres are familiar with one another. He spent 2 seasons recently in San Diego and has a good relationship with executive A.J. Preller. But Pham is looking to capitalize on a strong season in which he hit a 256, 328, 446 slash line with 16 homers, 68 RBIs, and is looking for regular playing time. So far, the Padres have been unwilling to meet Pham's demands. Whether that will be with playing time or with salary is still up in the air. But they have been in conversation, it sounds like. Another player that they have shown interest in this offseason is free agent outfielder Michael A. Taylor, which would be a great upgrade in center field for the Padres. And then you can let Jackson Merrill and some of the young guys develop in the minor leagues for a little bit longer, a little bit more seasoning before pulling them up this season. An additional note on the Padres, and this should be no surprise to anybody. Again, this is from Robert Murray at Fansided. One pitcher told Robert that Price 17-year-old catching prospect Ethan Salas is going to be really bleeping good, saying that he already catches like an experienced major league veteran. I could see that. I'm not surprised by that. Anybody surprised by that? The guy's going to be a stud. We've heard that from so many different outlooks. And I know the Padres want to see him up with the major league team as soon as possible. Might be a little bit longer. Just because the kid is, 17 years old. But that shouldn't be a shock to anybody. So hopefully he has another good year. Hopefully he has a good year hitting in the minor leagues. And we'll see what this Padres club could do. Overall, this Padres roster, this is the team until further notice. This is what they got. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the rotation. I know some people in the comments were saying what the rotation is going to be like. We know what the top 3 is. Everybody knows what the top 3 is. That's not even a secret. Musgrove, Darvish, and King in some particular order. But then you're going to have to go with 2 other players, either a younger guy or maybe go with knuckleballer Matt Waldron. He's a cool story, I guess. He's got to throw the knuckleball a lot more, but I don't know how I feel about entering the season with Matt Waldron as my number 4, my number 5. Again, limited sample size. But that job, those 2 jobs are still up for grabs for this Padres team, and these young pitchers are battling for it, and that's great. Competition and young players being hungry. Padres got rated a C, by the way, when it came to their offseason. I would probably give them a C or a C minus just based on what they have done. Padres offseason grade got a C according to Dave Schoenfield, an ESPN writer, who was really shocked when he was on the air earlier this week about Padres rolling with some of the young guys in starting spots. Offseason needs for the Padres are starting pitcher, a closer, and position player depth. They added Michael King, Yuki Matsui, Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito, Drew Thorpe, Kyle Higashioka, Jurickson Profar, Wandy Peralta, and Woo Suk Go. Their payroll's down $95 million from a year ago. That's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when you're trying to be under the luxury tax, which is obviously their main goal this season. And this is from David Schoenfield. We knew it would be a season of transition for the Padres after the death of owner Peter Seidler, and reports that the team had to borrow $50 million last September to meet payroll. So the nearly $100 million cut in payroll is hardly a surprise. 5 of those new faces listed above came over from the Yankees in the Juan Soto trade, giving the Padres much needed pitching depth, which I agree with. I think they did well enough in the trade, and Matsui could replace Josh Hader as closer, but they didn't do anything to help the outfield after including Trent Grisham alongside Soto, and now they're even trying shortstop prospect Jackson Merrill out there. I know what people in the Padres are saying about Jackson Merrill. I know what we were saying about Jackson Merrill in the bubble that is San Diego, but what are people outside of San Diego saying? When you could take off instead of rose-colored glass, the brown and gold glasses, and evaluate what's actually going on with the Padres. I mean, let's talk about it from perspective. If any other team in the division was going to roll out in center field a shortstop prospect that they had, albeit one of the best ones that they have, at 20 years old with only 42 games played in Double-A, Padres fans would laugh at that organization. But it's different for the Padres. This guy's going to be great. You have to look at it from an outside perspective. I'm playing devil's advocate. Again, I think Jackson Merrill is going to be good. But whether or not he's going to be a stud in the first year still remains to be seen. But even David Schoenfield's going and they're trying shortstop prospect Jackson Merrill out there. He's kind of concerned about that. I think it's interesting. So you start looking at this roster, and as Diesel G said in the chat, Brett Sullivan might be part of it. I mean, they get to carry 3 catchers this year because Brett Sullivan's a lefty. I mean, is he going to be the left-handed bat? Because he's done well in spring training. Let's look at the roster. In the outfield right now, you got Profar and Fernando. And then most likely, at this rate, it's going to be Jackson Merrill. And then is it Jose Azocar? Is it Oscar Mercado? Jacob Marcy? Cal Mitchell making the team? Tisa Ornelas? It's very interesting to see what the Padres are going to do. It sounds like Merrill's definitely in there with Profar, with Fernando. You still need another outfielder. It might be Sugar with Jose Azocar. Then in the infield, your infield's pretty much set for the most part. Machado, Kim, Bogarts, and Cronenworth. Your backups, I think Matthew Batten's slowly playing his way off of those roster. Is it Graham Pauley going to make the opening day roster? Is it Eggy Rosario that's going to make the opening day roster? Or are you going to go with Brett Sullivan with Camposano and Higashioka? Is Brett Sullivan going to be your left-handed bat? And then you're carrying 3 catchers. It's a lot of questions the Padres are going to have to answer here. But this is the team. I mean, this is their roster. I think their bullpen's fine. That's the least of their worries. Their bullpen's going to be good. Matsui's battling some things. It sounds like he's going to have to battle some injuries this year, which is not the end of the world as long as he's able to pitch. I just hope that he could pitch at a high level. That's why they brought him in. But to kind of recap the first hour, There are a lot of pros with this team, with the youth, young, hungry players trying to make a name for themselves, trying to get that big contract, play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Team camaraderie, very high with everything that Joe Musgrove has done, with the attitude of the Padres, with that edge that Mike Shildt has brought so far. All major pros. Cons for the Padres, inexperience with the youth, not having a full rotation with only the top three guys and two of those top three guys coming off an injury, and not having a complete roster. This is the last week of spring training. We got a game on later today at 1 o'clock right here on 97.3 The Fan. And we got the rest of the week, and Thursday they leave for Korea. They'll play a couple of games in Korea. Then they'll play the regular season games in Korea as we're 10 days out. Then they'll come back. They'll have 2 more exhibition games against the Mariners. I wouldn't put too much salt in that. And we're ready to go. With either a 1-1 record, a 2-0 record, or an 0-2 record, being ready for the home opener at Petco Park against the San Francisco Giants. Where you at with this ball club? I look at outside perspectives of this team, and if you look at it again without the brown and gold glasses, and you see that the number one closer in baseball is not returning, and arguably the best hitting outfielder in baseball is not returning in Juan Soto, and you're losing a Cy Young award winner on this team, and you cut payroll by $95 million, and you didn't really address a lot of your needs aside from pitching depth in the bullpen. The roster itself is not as good as it was last year, and last year they went 82-80. Why would this year be any different? Because we're just rolling the dice that the young guys are going to come up and play and be studs, and the stars will carry this ball club? That's a lot of ifs. That would be the con side of this pro-con story for the San Diego Padres. This is the most questions I've ever had going into a season. This is the most not cut and dry expectations that I've had going into a Padres season. Because in years past, even when they weren't very good, you knew they weren't going to be very good. And you could go in with the optimism like, hey, look, you know what? They're just playing with house money right now. In the last couple of years, you knew they were going to be good. There was expectations, and whether or not they fulfilled those expectations are two totally different things. But you knew the Padres were going to be in a conversation. Right now, you don't really know. They could or they could not. This is the most uncertainty I've ever felt as a Padres fan entering a season. Is that good or bad? I don't know. We're going to talk more Padres baseball later in the second hour, but I do want to talk some Aztec basketball as we are in March. It is March in America's finest city. Conference tournaments coming up, NCAA tournament coming up. We'll recap the college basketball night from last night. Coming up next on the Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97 through the Fan. Hour number 2 of the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local, each and every Sunday from 8 to 10. Thanks again for making our Sunday a part of yours. As we get you ready for Padres baseball coming up at 1 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock now because of the time change. Arizona doesn't change their clocks. California does. So we're back on the same time zone as Arizona. The Pacific time zone. Arizona bounces between Mountain Time and Pacific Time. I'll not bore you any further with that information, but we do have Padres baseball coming up for you at 1 o'clock with Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr. on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. As we are counting down the days until Padres opening day, and of course, Padres opening day in Korea, 10 days out now. Today's Padre game at 1:10 will be against the Angels on the road. Be Johnny Brito going for San Diego and Chase Silseth going for the Angels of Los Angeles. Interesting to see how this game plays out. We'll see what we got. Lineups are in as the Padres and Angels duke it out. Mike Trout is in the lineup for the Halos today. And they go Rengifo, Shanuel, Trout, Rendon, Hicks, Ward, Drury, Ohapi, and Nito. Padres going with Wade, Mercado, Pauly, Miller, Rosario, Higashioka, Azakar, LeCastro, and McCoy. So a lot of the backup guys today for the San Diego Padres. Again, if you want to dial into the show, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Be sure to chime in on the YouTube chat. You can follow me on social media at B_SURP, at B_SURP. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We are on TikTok. All over the place. You can also follow my YouTube page at B_SURP as well. B Serp. Lisa in the chat. Braden, I'm shocked you didn't have your March drop ready. No, that's coming later. It's better when I pull it on Annie and Elston than I do on myself. Game will be on the radio for sure, Chance. I don't know whether or not it'll be streamed. There's usually some type of stream for video, either webcast or on Padres TV or whatever the heck it's called right now, because it's not on cable yet, and I guess we're going to find out more information on that in just a little bit. I do want to get to your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We're going to talk some March Madness in college basketball here in just a second, but I do want to get to Chance in San Diego, who's calling into the show. Chance, what's going on?
What's going on, Brendan? So I just have, a couple of comments. I 100% agree with what you're going through. I'm here in Peoria right now, and the vibe is completely different with these players. Last year, I've been coming to Peoria for the last few years now. And, before it would always be fans, signing fans, jumping, just having fun, right? And impressing fans. And this year, the vibe is they're so focused. It's crazy. They're not doing much autographs. And after they get pulled from the game, they're going to the backfields and practicing. Last few years, they weren't doing that. I just feel Mike Schilt has these guys on a whole different mindset level, because this is the team we're going with, man. This is the team we're going with, and this is the facts. And they're looking good. We're gonna have our bumps. We're gonna have our bumps in the road, but man, I feel that. I'm not saying this is no World Series caliber team. By far, it's not. But this is what we're rolling with. The vibe is much different. Today, I'm getting ready to get. You can see on the chat, I'm going to Diablo Stadium to go see what they're doing, and then I'm heading home. Yeah, as a person that has been a lifelong Padre fan and coming to Peoria, coming to see spring training, it's completely different. The vibe, it's crazy. So I just want to say, for all the fans out there, you guys just know that these players are focused, and these new these prospects they're in it, and they're in it to win it. And I feel they're all on the same team. Feel they're not split apart. Like last year, you could see there was egos, there was stuff going on in the clubhouse. This year, it doesn't. And I said it when I talked to you last year, Brendan. When I said it's the egos. When I talked to you and Coach, it's the batting, it's the coaching, and it kind of like showed that towards the end. So, yeah, it's just a different vibe. So, let's see what they do this year. This today. Let's see what they do after the games. But again, yesterday they were getting pulled out from the games, and Bogarts, Tatis, Machado, they're all going to the backfields practicing. So last year I noticed what they were doing. They were going back to the clubhouse, just to take their shower and do whatever, but study tape maybe or whatever they're doing. But this year, Schilt has them going straight back to the backfields.
Yeah, Chance, I appreciate the phone call and the live look in, and enjoy the rest of your trip out there in Arizona, and look forward to having you back in San Diego.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'm gonna head back. Hopefully, I'm probably head back tonight, so I'll probably be back in early tomorrow morning.
Oh, nice. So. Good. Make sure you get a date shake in Dateland on your way home.
Hey, you know what? I kind of tripped on that. So they got good shakes out there, right? Me and my wife, we're saying Dateland. That'd be kind of funny. Where you at over at Dateland?
Yeah, that's a must stop every time you're driving from here to either Phoenix or Tucson. You got to stop in Dateland, get yourself a date shake, Chance.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna try that out on the way home. So hopefully they're open.
Oh, I'm sure they will. It's a good place to get gas, and you can get a date shake and check it off the list. That's the staple for all those San Diego, Arizona Wildcats that drive to and from, when they go out there for school and stuff. Chance, appreciate the phone call.
Yeah, thank you. So date now we're coming, date shake.
Yeah, there you go.
Date shake.
Yeah, let me know how you got to call in and let me know how it went. Thanks again to Chance for taking the time to make a phone call. I know he's very popular in chat. He's very excited right now. Padres fans are excited. I like it. And everything that he said is 100% true of this Padres team, and I love it. It's coming from the players, though. I'm sure Mike Schilt has some say in this. He does bring that edge, but I do think the players took last year. Yeah, I don't want to be cliche and, be the Michael Jordan aspect. I took that personally. But I do think they took that last season personally. I mean, it's embarrassing. If you're a Major League Baseball player and a high-played star, like some of these players are, like Bogarts, like Fernando, like Manny, and you did the whole we're going to the World Series thing at Fan Fest and getting the crowd excited, which I know it's part of the game, right? I mean, you have to play the fan game, the marketing game, the excitement game. I understand that. But to go through all of that and continue with we're just going to turn things around. It's eventually going to turn around. And for last year's team, with all the stars that they had to not make the playoffs, it's embarrassing. It's flat out embarrassing. And I think they know that. In fact, I know they know that. And they're taking it seriously. Sometimes the best way to learn and to succeed is through failure. Because sometimes you need a wake-up call in order to get back on track or understand the process that you had before to get back to the place that you want to be, especially when it comes to winning in sports and being successful in any entity of life. You learn so much through failure. I mean, they learned last year how not to win a baseball game. They learned so many ways how not to win a baseball game. And this year, it's different. This year, they're buying into the team camaraderie. They're buying into the relationships and what it means to be a Padre. They're fully embracing that. I mean, last year, Machado flat out said, what is this, college baseball? When talking about pulling the rope in the right direction and players having good chemistry and all that. I think the Padres kind of overlooked that for a long time. We saw the inside articles going into the end of the last season about the differences between what the Padres had done to get ready for a game and be prepared for the season and what their main competitor in the division did in the Los Angeles Dodgers, and how their players checked their egos at the door and went and did batting practice all the time out on the field and took extra ground balls and was out there early warming up for Major League Baseball games when the Padres, didn't really have to. Some of that's set by the coaching staff. A lot of that, especially in the pro level, is set by the players in the organization. And they're doing all the right things right now to try and really make good on last year. And they're gonna have to do it with less weapons and less assets than they had a year ago. But if they make that process better, and I think spring training not having the distraction of the WBC, which I do think is a fun thing for baseball, but for the Padres in particular, they're missing a lot of guys. I think not having all of that and being able to build as a team right now has been great. And this trip to Korea could be great for team camaraderie as well. They're going to spend a week out there together. And regardless of what happens in Korea with the two games, either they, regardless if they win two, they split the two, or they lose the two, we'll see what they are like when they come back from that trip and they get into the season. But I definitely agree with Chance. I mean, it's a lot different of a vibe from the team perspective this year than it was last year. I don't think the expectations are as high. I don't think the excitement level for the team is as high. But I do think from the players' perspective, this team seems a lot more dialed in than they were a year ago at this time. I'm not going to throw Bob Melvin under the bus because I think he's a really good manager. And based on some of the inside information, you can't really throw everything on the bus to Bob Melvin. But, whether it's the coaching staff that implemented this change with Mike Schilt, whether or not Mike Schilt can get the most out of these players more so than Bob Melvin did, or the fact that the players are taking initiative, they're doing the right things. They're going out and doing those things. That's going to lead to successful baseball. On top of the fact that they're going to have some young guys that are hungry and eager to go out there and compete. Again, back on the pro side of this Padres team in 2024 in comparison to some of the cons. And a lot of the cons are coming from outside perspectives. Not being on the inside and seeing the same thing over and over again and trying to, overbuild this Padres team. Because as fans, you're excited every year that the Padres start, every year that your team gets ready to go. I wanted to talk about March Madness and San Diego State. We're going to talk about them in just a little bit, but I wanted to get that out there. Again, thanks for the phone call from Chance, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. When we come back, we're going to break down San Diego State's season going into the Mountain West tournament. Was this a disappointing season for the Aztecs? Was it a down season for the Aztecs? I don't think it was a down year, but I do think it was a disappointing year finishing in 5th place. They finished in 5th place in the conference. I know the conference is a lot better, but 5th place? I don't know about that. I mean, to me, that's kind of a disappointment. We're going to talk Aztec basketball. We'll see how far they can go in the NCAA tournament, what seed they might potentially get, and what the Mountain West Conference tournament's going to look like as that got finalized yesterday. San Diego State Aztec basketball, March Madness, when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Little Blink-182 for you on a Sunday morning. Excited for Padres baseball coming up at 1 o'clock as they play the Halos today. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the Braden Surprenant Show. Live and local on a Sunday. Each and every Sunday from 8 to 10. Follow me on social media at B_SURP, at BSurp. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at B_SURP, as well as my YouTube page at B_SURP, on top of the fact that we're also live 97 through the fans, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Some of you are on Twitch. Yeah, one guy on Twitch. On the Twitch feed. Is that mostly for gaming? Twitch streaming? I don't know. Who's to say? Aztec basketball ended on Friday for the regular season. San Diego State lost to Boise State. I mean, that shot that Boise State hit in overtime was ridiculous. Last second desperation heave with the shot clock winding down. Hawked it. Gave people the sense that San Diego's cursed in sports. It's a tough loss for the Aztecs. With that loss and with other results in the Mountain West Conference on Saturday, San Diego State in the Mountain West Tournament is, in fact, the 5 seed. Aztecs are the 5 seed in the Mountain West Tournament. Is that disappointing, Aztec fans? Was that a disappointing season for San Diego State to finish 5th in conference? I mean, not even close to winning a regular season conference championship when you are the best team in conference. Supposed to be coming into the season. I would say it's disappointing. For sure. Would I say it's a down year for San Diego State? No, I wouldn't say it's a down year. I mean, a down year would be, them finishing, I guess around 5-6 or lower in the Mountain West, but also they wouldn't be ranked. They've been ranked multiple times this season. The Mountain West Conference this year is really good. So nothing to be overly ashamed about. But now they get the 5 seed, and they got a tough game against UNLV on Thursday. That game will tip off at 2:30 Pacific time on CBS Sports Network on Thursday against UNLV. A team that, by the way, is one of the teams that is not one of the Mountain West schools that is expected to be in the NCAA tournament unless they win the Mountain West tournament, which is played at their home venue at the Thomas and Mack Center. So a true road game for the Aztecs nonetheless against UNLV on Thursday. If they win that game, they will play the winner of most likely Utah State and Wyoming, if Wyoming can beat Fresno on Wednesday. And then a win on Friday would put them in the championship on Saturday. It could be against any one of the combinations of Nevada, Boise State, New Mexico, Colorado State, San Jose State, or Air Force. As it stands right now for San Diego State, they were right on the cusp of being a 4 seed. It looks like they're probably going to be a 5. We'll see what happens in this tournament. I think if they win the Mountain West tournament, they could be a 4 seed. They do have a better net ranking than everybody else in the conference, or correction, they have a better ranking in terms of seeding, according to Joe Lunardi, than everybody else in the Mountain West Conference. They're the only team that is really battling for a number 4 seed in conference. And to me, with San Diego State, when it comes to their basketball team, they have the ability to go on a little bit of a run, but they also are lacking a lot of the depth that they had last year that gave them the ability to go to the Final Four and ultimately the national championship. What would be a successful run in the tournament for San Diego State? Sweet 16 appearance this season? Or would they have to go to the Elite 8? I think if they make it to the Sweet 16 this year, I think they have had a successful season. But some of the players they lost last year, with having to come back after making the national championship, which is very difficult to do in general, with the season they played, the schedule they've played, the conference that they're in, being in the Sweet 16, I think, would be a successful season. And last year I said they'd have to make the Elite 8 for it to be a successful season. And they obviously blew past that with a little bit of their run. Here's why I think San Diego State does have a chance to make a run, because they do have the talent. They have Jaden Ledee. Foul calls are very much ticky-tack in the NCAA tournament. And on top of that, it really just depends on who they draw. I mean, I look at some of the top seeds, according to Joe Lunardi, after last night's update. And you look at it, there are some teams that he has ranked really high that are not necessarily teams that I'm afraid of. If I'm San Diego State, if San Diego State gets put in a region that has Arizona in it, I'm not concerned. Same with Kansas. I mean, Kansas is expected to be a 4 seed. Kansas can't beat anybody on the road. I'm a Big 12 guy. I watch Big 12 basketball all the time. Kansas can't beat anybody outside of Allen Fieldhouse, and BYU went in there and kicked their ass. I know San Diego State lost to BYU this season. That was earlier in the year. I mean, Kansas is not a world beater team. They're projected to get a 4 seed. Creighton's okay. I mean, Creighton had a huge lead against Villanova, who is one of the first 4 teams out right now in the tournament. They ended up beating them by 2. Arizona got run out of the Galen Center last night against USC. They're expected to get a 2 seed. Your 1 seeds, Purdue, Tennessee, Houston, and UConn. Houston and UConn are really good. But Tennessee lost last night to Kentucky. Purdue with Edney, is not a team that I'm concerned about. He's just taller than everybody else. They got exposed last year. It's a reason why he didn't go to the NBA. He doesn't have what it takes to be an NBA player because he's not an athletic 7-footer. He's just a 7-foot gigantic human being. I'm not afraid of Purdue. I watched that Duke team last night. They're good. They're not great. Duke's expect to get a 2 seed. It's a wide open college basketball field. Wide open college basketball field this year. That's why I think they got a chance. Because of the fact that there's no one dominant team. They're not playing a Calipari, Kentucky one-and-done team that they got to get through. There's not that Jay Wright-led Villanova team that nobody's going to be able to beat. This Kansas Jayhawk team, coached by Bill Self, is not a world-beater team that is going to give everybody problems, and if you draw them, it's just an automatic loss. There's none of that. I've watched Big 12 basketball all season. That is arguably the best conference. Sure, they're going to they threw out the whole, they're finagling the schedule for the net, which would be the biggest form of insanity I've ever heard. But even in the Big 12, I mean, there's teams in the Big 12 that are they're solid, but they're not ridiculous. They're not teams that San Diego State can't beat. That's why I think it's wide open. Here's where things stand right now, according to Joe Lunardi. Last 4 buys: Colorado State, Seton Hall, TCU, Mississippi State. Don't get me started on TCU losing to UCF yesterday. I was pulling my hair out. Last 4 in: New Mexico, St. John's, Virginia, Colorado. First 4 out: Villanova, Providence, Iowa, Drake. Next 4 out: Utah, Wake Forest, Memphis, and Texas A&M. Latest bracketology that Joe Lunardi put out on Friday, which actually has some matchups for you for San Diego State, has the Aztecs as a 5 seed playing in Spokane against Grand Canyon, where they can get revenge against the Antelopes that they lost to on the road, which is a tough place to play, before taking on the winner of Illinois and Irvine. In the West region, which I think is a major step for San Diego State. If they could be in the West region, I don't really care if they're a 5, a 6, a 4, a 2, whatever. If they can go through Los Angeles, I think it bodes well for the Aztecs. Let's just for argument's sake, because I know a lot of people are like, there's no way they can make a run. Here's why they can, positively on Sunday. Take it positive on Sunday. Tennessee is good. They're not great. They would play the winner of Stetson and Norfolk State. Texas, Nebraska. I've seen Texas play this season. They're okay. Nebraska's, the Big Ten's not very good. San Diego State, They've already seen Grand Canyon. I think they could beat them at a neutral site. Illinois is good. They're a good team. That would be difficult for them. Irvine's solid, but you already beat them this year. Utah State, or you ran out of the building at Viejas. St. John's, Virginia. Baylor's good, but they've been struggling as of late. Morehead State, Gonzaga, who you already beat on the road. Colorado State, who you already ran out of the building here in San Diego. Arizona, who is a disaster as a 2 seed, and Eastern Washington. They get that region, they have a chance to make it to the Elite Eight. They're that talented. They do have Jaden Ledee. That's why I think it's a positive. They can go on a little bit of a run, but we'll see what happens in the Mountain West tournament. This tournament's wide open this year in college basketball. It's wide open. You don't have that perennial power that's got all the best players, 1 through 10. You have a lot of good teams, and it's going to lead to some great basketball in March. And we are a week away. This time next week, not really this time, but next week, next Sunday, Selection Sunday. We'll find out where San Diego State is playing. We'll find out what seed they are. And hopefully at this point, all you're hoping for is they make it into the West region. And worst case scenario, they're in Dallas for the South. Limited travel. That's all you're really looking for now if you're San Diego State. Maybe you can win the Mountain West tournament. That'd be great. Doesn't really matter. You have already made it into the tournament. Get yourself to a good region. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. When we come back, I do want to mention something Nick Saban said that is really changing the landscape of college athletics as we know it, and why I don't necessarily know it's a good thing for college sports. It might be the demise of college athletics as we know it. I'll talk about that when we come back. I do want to get back to your phone calls. If you're waiting on hold, please stay there. I'll get to you during the break. This is the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local on Sundays, 8 to 10 on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final segment of the show. God, the show went by so fast. On a Sunday morning, all of you guys waking up thinking it's 8:38. It's not. It's 9:38. We sprung forward. Daylight savings time. That's the bad news. The good news is the sun's going to be out longer today, which is great. I think most people like that. We talked about that on Friday. I had to get scientific with Andy and Elston, but that being said, I do like when the sun is up longer than when it's not. It's nice when the sun is up at like 6 o'clock. But tonight, the sun will set at 6:53. Sun's setting at 7 o'clock tonight almost. Exciting. That means spring is here. That means the summer is right around the corner, which means Padres baseball is ready to go. And we'll have spring training action for you coming up at 1 o'clock. Padres Angels on 97.3 The Fan. Get excited, Padres fans. We only have a couple more of these spring training games left, and then it is go time for the Padres in Korea against the hated Los Angeles Dodgers. Things are looking up, Elisa. I agree. More sun, baseball. Things are looking up. Elisa's comment. It's also March. It's March. March. Great time of the year. March Madness, ready to go. We got a lot of Aztec basketball to talk. Obviously, we'll talk some Padres. Maybe a little bit more at the end, but I do want to get to your phone calls. There's one other thing I want to mention up. When it comes to college athletics, it's something Nick Saban said. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But I do want to get back to the phones, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Let's go up to Ed and Escondido joining the show, the Braden Surprenant Show on 97 through the Fan. Ed, what's going on?
Hi, Braden. How are you? Great show. Love it on Sundays.
I appreciate that. So I'm glad I can take you away from the national noise. On the weekends, we can stay local on the weekends.
Absolutely. Hey, let's talk a little Aztecs. You know, I'm an alumni. I've been watching the Aztecs for years. I definitely think they have a good shot in the NCAA to go at least to the Sweet 16. I think they're incredibly athletic. The problem that I see with the Aztecs is, number one, they're incredibly streaky shooters.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I've seen in most of these games that I've watched, they miss a ton of layups. I mean, they must have missed 5 or 6 layups. Lamont Butler must have missed 3 or 4. I mean, it seems like he needs to slow down just a taste. Because if they start making these layups, they win these games by 5, 6 points. I mean, I've noticed that in all these close games, you know, for at least this whole year. And like I said, I think they have every bit as good a team as last year. They are incredibly athletic. Jay Paul is a stud, I think. And I like Lamont, but boy, he just can't shoot sometimes. And like I said, I think he's playing too fast. He needs to throttle it down a bit and make some of those layups. Like I said, I think he missed 3 layups. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Aztecs, well, they are very streaky, first of all. They're absolutely very streaky, and they're very inconsistent, which I guess goes with the streakiness when it comes to their three-point shooting, when it comes to their bench play, when it comes to, you know, really facilitating Jaden Ledee. I mean, they can't just rely on Jaden Ledee to take him out of all sorts of problems, especially when he's a guy that gets more foul calls at home than he does on the road statistically, especially in the Mountain West Conference. But they got to get better play out of their supporting cast. And when I mean better play, I mean more consistent play out of their supporting cast and taking care of some of the little things that the Aztecs have neglected for this year. They do have a very talented team. I also agree they're very athletic. They're not as deep as they were last year, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the horses that can make a little bit of a run in the NCAA tournament. And I laid it out for you. I mean, their potential path to the Sweet 16 is not overly difficult. I mean, that's not to say that it's a guarantee, but to say that they can't make a run because they might not be as good as last year it's a little bit of a stretch just because you don't know what you're going to get in March.
Agreed. I think that though, let's hope they come together by that time, make a few extra layups, get a little hotter shooting, and who knows, maybe they'll make the Elite Eight. You never know.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'd like to see him in the West. Ed, appreciate the phone call. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks, Braden. Great show.
Thanks to Ed for joining the show. Really appreciate it. Hopefully they can make a little bit of a run. It would be nice to see. I mean, I think an early exit in the Mountain West tournament, an early exit in the NCAA tournament would really have people upset about the Aztec season. I think it'd feel even more disappointing than it already is being the 5 seed. But as Ed mentioned, I mean, they're very athletic and they could do a lot of damage in the tournament because they play defense too. I mean, they've always been able to play good defense. If they could get more consistent shooting, which they have the ability of doing, they could get hot at the right time, which is something that they did last year. They got hot at the right time last year. And that might be what they need to do in order to make a run here to the Elite Eight. I think if they make the Sweet 16, it'd be a successful season, especially how the end of the regular season ended. Here's what I really wanted to get to is we have, about 10 minutes or so left in the show. There was a great article on ESPN this week by Chris Lowe of ESPN. He's a senior writer. And he has a sit down with NickSaban as Alabama transitioned from NickSaban to Kalen DeBoer in about a 49-hour period. And in the interview with NickSaban talks about why he retired, which I think is very interesting. He goes back to the final game that Alabama played against Michigan last year in the playoffs. Here's what NickSaban had to say. He told the athletic director, Greg Byrne, he used to be athletic director at the University of Arizona when I was there. So, Greg, this is getting more and more difficult on me. I'm not ready to do it now, but we're going to have to start evaluating this more on a year-to-year basis, talking, of course, about him potentially retiring. While hopeful Saban would keep coaching, Byrne knew deep down that the 72-year-old legend was giving him notice, so he quickly went to work. Byrne had his staff research the college head coaching hires of the past 25 years from the winningest 25 programs during that span. And Greg Byrne talks about some of that. They were disappointed with last year, obviously, that again, this was Alabama, so the Tide could set their sights higher than most. And they could also set their sights higher than most programs when it comes to hiring a new coach. By Bama standards, the start of last season was a struggle, but Nick Saban was exceedingly proud of how much the team improved. The Tide reeled off 11 straight wins, culminating with a 27-24 victory over Georgia in the SEC title game, snapping the two-time defending national champion Bulldogs' 29-game winning streak. We weren't a very good team those first few weeks of the season, but it's a credit to those kids how far they came, Saban said. I'm not sure I've had a team that improved more over the course of the season. But Alabama's 27-20 overtime loss to Michigan in the college football playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl on January 1st was a hard one for Saban to digest. Not only was Saban upset about the way his team played, he was especially disheartened about some of the things that happened afterward in the Rose Bowl locker room and back on campus when he met with some of the players. This is what Nick Saban had to say in this ESPN article. I want to be clear that wasn't the reason, but some of those events certainly contributed, Saban said of his decision to retire. I was really disappointed in the way that the players acted after the game. You got to win with class. You got to lose with class. We had our opportunities to win the game and we didn't do it. And then showing your ass and being frustrated and throwing helmets and doing that stuff, that's not who we are and what we've promoted in our program. Once back in Tuscaloosa, as Saban began meeting with players, it became more apparent to him that his message wasn't resonating like it once did. I thought we could have a hell of a team next year, and then maybe 70 or 80% of the players you talk to, all they want to know is two things. What assurances do I have that I'm going to play because they're thinking about transferring? And how much are you going to pay me? Saban recounted. Our program here was built on how much value can we create for your future and your personal development, academic success, and graduating and developing an NFL career on the field. So I'm saying to myself, Nick Saban, maybe this doesn't work anymore. And the goals and aspirations are just different, and that it's all about how much money can I make as a college player. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's never been what we were all about, and it's not why we had success through the years. People wanted assurances that I was going to be here for 3 or 4 years, and it became harder to make those assurances, Saban said. But the thing I loved about coaching the most was the relationships that you had with players, and those things didn't seem to have the same meaning as they once did. And so Nick Saban retires. Those are some damning comments for college athletics in general. And the priority of some of the student athletes that are no longer going to be student athletes probably in the near future. They're probably going to be professionals. But the fact of the matter is, they acted like children after they lost the game, which at the college level, especially for a program like Alabama, is obviously, as Nick said it, unacceptable to not be able to win with class, to not be able to lose with class. But on top of the fact, not really being upset about the loss, coming back for more to try to win, but how much playing time am I going to get? How much money you paying me? Again, as Nick Saban said, he's not saying it's wrong. He's just saying it's different. I would say to an extent it is a little wrong. And I understand that you can get, this is the time right now. It's as best as ever to be a college athlete. You're finally getting something after years of not getting anything monetarily. They have been getting a lot. Most people don't want to realize that or acknowledge it because most people do not value the importance of an education anymore, which is fine. If you want to get paid and get paid to be a college athlete, so be it. I think that should be your right. If you are making money for programs, it's fine. I'm all in favor of a capitalistic market where you get paid for what you do well. And if you're doing things very well, you should be rewarded for it. That's fine. But the attitude of some of these Alabama players, according to the recollection of Nick Saban, about 70 to 80% of this ball club, was how much playing time am I going to get and how much money you're going to pay me. That is a different attitude than most professional athletes. That by the time they get to the pros, I mean, obviously they're well taken care of. They are all getting paid in the top 1% of the United States and more. So they don't really have to worry about that. They could just focus on playing. But I think it's a very bad precedent set for college sports. And I think this is trending into the direction of you might as well just make it a pro sport. There's really no reason to have college athletics anymore and anything affiliated with a student athlete. Just pay them. Let's do it. I mean, you can't be half in, half out. This week, and I'm running out of time, but this week, they announced that there's going to be an NIL, which is not NIL. This is not NIL, by the way. This is not the definition of name, image, and likeness. But they're going to have an in-season tournament for college basketball, one of those holiday tournaments, in which they pay every team that goes $1 million for their players. So the $1 million will be split amongst the players that are invited to this tournament, to an addition of another $1 million that will be paid to the winning team. There's nothing about that. It's about your name, image, and likeness. You're getting paid to play, which is basically where we're at right now with college sports. So why are we half in, half out? You might as well just jump in. Let's get this over with. You are a pro sports now. This is pro sports now. You can't have the benefits of being a college student athlete, amateur, and the benefits of being a pro with no consequences. I mean, we're pro time now. This is all about being a pro now, which is fine if you want that. Dartmouth basketball program wants that because in the Ivy League, you can't get NIL. They have voted 13-0 as a team to unionize because they are now employees of the school. With that comes obviously major consequences of getting cut. Are you going to have a waiver wire? Are you going to have, contract disputes? Are you going to sign contracts? I mean, there's so many different things you could go about this. If you're a high school athlete, do you declare for a conference draft? Are all these conferences going to start drafting players now to make it an even playing field instead of a bidding war for players with contracts? Are they going to be salary caps? I mean, you're in it now. This is it. This is the can of worms you opened up. That first collective bargaining agreement for college athletics between the student athletes and the schools is going to be fascinating. We all know Major League Baseball's got the best union in the nation for most entities. What kind of collective bargaining agreement are they going to have? What kind of union are they going to have? Are they going to pay union fees? I mean, there's so many things you can unpack here, and all it's doing is taking away from the luster of college athletics. And I'm an NIL fan. Anybody that started their own YouTube page that was making money as a high school athlete that had to dump it to play college was absurd. The Cavender twins, who made all their success not really playing basketball, but doing other things, shouldn't have to give that up because they started playing college basketball. Like it was some insane benefit. Same thing could be said about a lot of things. The not being able to pay for a meal for a student athlete. That's where the NCAA got so psychotic and didn't use common sense that it became the death of them. They no longer exist. It's all about the conference now. And really, it's run by television. And television is going to carry this thing for the remainder of time. It has gone so far in the opposite direction, it doesn't look like it's stopping. I'm curious to see what they start to implement with college athletics. But what NickSaban said this week about what his players were saying in exit interviews, I could see why he retired. How much playing time am I going to get? How much money are you paying me? I'm going to go somewhere that's going to pay me more, which is their right. By all means, that's their right at this point. But where are we going to get to a point where it's like pro sports? You didn't even want to know what Trent Dilfer said about the college athletics, especially college football. Let college football break away. Let everybody else go back to their conferences. It's getting ridiculous. I'm Braden Surprenant. That'll do it for me on a Sunday morning. We'll be back next Sunday from 8 to 10. You can catch me on Andy and Elston every day from 10 to 2. Padres baseball coming up at 1 o'clock. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.